Out of all the Naruto what ifs I've done, one of the biggest questions on my mind has been, what if Tsunade never left Konoha? As we all know, after the deaths of her brother and of her lover, Tsunade will find herself walking into gambling halls and drinking herself into oblivion and running away or doing God knows what in order to get out of her gambling debts. However, what if this never happened? What if Tsunade chose to remain in Konoha during her time of grief and mourning and never left the village? Well, in today's edition of Naruto What If, we're going to look at just that scenario. Now, like all my what ifs, in order for this to happen, we must first establish a trigger point. In my opinion, the only one that makes sense is that Tsunade is never allowed to leave the village after the death of her lover. Instead, Hiruzen would keep her in Konoha, stating that she's too important of an asset to allow to be left to roam free. And that during this time of tragedy, the granddaughter of the first Hokage must depend on the comrades in the village that her grandfather built in order to overcome her personal demons. Though she would be upset with the third Hokage for doing so, she would comply with his orders. I still believe that over the years, Tsunade would still go on to be Shizune's teacher, but working with Hiruzen, I do believe that extra support will cause a major change in the timeline. Tsunade would get over her hemophobia much sooner than she did originally. In my personal opinion, with Tsunade, as damaged as she was mentally, being on her own, drinking, and never addressing the problems that made her have hemophobia in the first place is why she had it for as long as she did. This brings us to our next major change that develops in this timeline. After the end of the Third Great Ninja War, Jiraiya would still turn down the offer to become the Fourth Hokage. Like it was stated, he was offered the position but turned it down. But instead of Minato riding the fame from the Third Great Ninja War over to the Hokage mantle, it would be Tsunade herself. We know based on the manga that Hiruzen always wanted Jiraiya to become Hokage, but Jiraiya turned down the position, which opens up the door for Tsunade because this would be another sannin who would be in the running for the actual title. Given Tsunade would actually be in the village during this time, and the fact that Orochimaru and Fugaku Uchiha were on the list of Hokage candidates, Tsunade would be on that list as well. Out of all the candidates, she would have the strongest claim, and she would more than likely be the one that is picked by the feudal lord. A hero of the Second Great Ninja War, one of the three legendary sannin, granddaughter of the first Hokage, great niece of the second Hokage, pupil of the third Hokage, and acknowledged as the best medic in the ninja world. Minato might have rode the wave of his fame during the Third Great Ninja War, but his exploits in the ninja war would not be enough to overcome the blood ties that Tsunade has to the two prior Hokages and being a student of the current Hokage, especially not when this information is presented to the feudal lord. This causes a major change in the timeline, especially when it comes to the birth of Naruto Uzumaki. Given the village level crisis that could potentially unfold if the birth of a Jinchuriki's baby goes horribly wrong, Tsunade would be the one that's in the room with Minato during Naruto's birth. Hiruzen would still be waiting inside the village as a last line of defense in case Kushina's seal broke completely during the childbirth process. When Obito enters the room to capture Kushina, he would have a much harder time than he did in the original timeline because taking down one of the legendary sannin isn't going to be as easy as taking out the fodder that were the random medic and the third Hokage's wife. This means that Obito never places paper bombs on baby Naruto. Having a high level ninja there in Tsunade allows Minato to directly engage Obito or teleport his wife and child out of the room. Regardless of the scenario, Obito is screwed. Between Minato using Flying Raijin, potentially connecting his chakra to Tsunade, which would allow him to teleport her at will, Obito has too many nasty combos that he has to worry about. In my opinion, just as Minato originally came to the conclusion that this was the work of Madara Uchiha, Tsunade would do the same thing here. Once Tsunade releases her Byakugo seal, which she would inevitably do against a threat she believed to be Madara, she and Minato would take down Obito, if not outright kill him if Tsunade lands one of her direct blows after her Byakugo seal is unleashed. This has major ramifications going forward. Minato would be shattered upon learning that Obito was the one behind the mask, as would Kakashi after he would visit Obito in his cell. Seeing Obito with chakra seals around his Sharingan screaming at Kakashi for the murder of Rin, this would break Kakashi mentally. If we go by the Naruto Ninja Escapades OVA, Kushina loved Obito the most out of all of Minato's students, even stating that she wanted their child to have Obito's heart. Kushina, seeing the boy that she viewed like a son locked up and knowing that he tried to kill her, would be something that would absolutely break Kushina as well. However, on a brighter side, Naruto would grow up in a much happier life in this timeline. Both of his parents would be alive. Naruto wouldn't have daddy issues like Asuma and Boruto because his father wouldn't be the Hokage, but instead a normal Jonin inside the village, albeit a very important Jonin, but still just a regular Jonin. Naruto would grow up far more skilled than he did in the original timeline. He'd have the patient genius of a father training him. He'd have a hot-blooded mother who knew a plethora of Uzumaki's sealing jutsu, and Jiraiya would still likely teach Naruto high-level ninjutsu just as he did in the original timeline. Like Tsunade got him to admit, that was Jiraiya's way of spoiling him because he reminded Jiraiya of Minato. Naruto also wouldn't grow up to be a Jinchuriki, which means that people would never hate him unless he would play major pranks, which is going to be very debatable if he would do so in this timeline. Both of his parents would be alive. He wouldn't feel the need to pull pranks for attention, and if he did, Kushina would beat the fear of God, Buddha, Jehovah, Allah, and Hagoromo and Lady Tenten into him. Not being a Jinchuriki means that Naruto wouldn't start so far behind the curve when compared to his peers. Originally, and for a large chunk of the series, Naruto's chakra control was absolutely horrendous. Just using basic jutsu required him to use 4 to 5 times the amount of chakra that was actually required for the jutsu. In this timeline, Naruto would have at a minimum average chakra control, and he would know the basics of ninjutsu, and depending on how well you think Minato is able to train Naruto, he could have perfect chakra control by the time he leaves the academy. Another major change is that Konoha would never be destroyed, which means that the Uchiha clan would never be relocated to the outskirts of the village. While the Uchiha would still likely take issue with Tsunade, the granddaughter of the first Hokage and the great niece of the second Hokage, they would take issue with Tsunade being named the fourth Hokage. I do believe not being blamed for the QB attack does reason to turn everyone on the Uchiha. However, I don't think he's successful, and it's for a few reasons. Tsunade is a pretty sharp and level-headed individual when she's not dealing with a crisis, as are Hiruzen and Minato. I don't believe that Tsunade would take an extreme approach like Danzo might suggest. However, I do believe she would go directly to Fugaku and ask him if he knew the truth about Minato, because Tsunade would be bold enough to do something like that. Now, this changes everything depending on how Fugaku takes this. If he's standoffish, he plays right into Danzo's hands. However, given where we are in the actual timeline and the fact that the first Itachi light novel, Itachi's Story Daylight, makes it very clear that during this part in the timeline, while Fugaku was annoyed with Konoha and crushed that his Hokage dream was being squashed, I don't believe that he would turn his back on the village that he had love for a very long time. Having someone with genjutsu on the level of Fugaku being able to interrogate Obito is absolutely huge. Based on what we know from the Itachi Daylight novel, Fugaku's genjutsu was enough that it earned him the nickname Wicked Eye Fugaku, and his genjutsu was advanced enough that Hiruzen and Danzo both acknowledged him as being a generational talent like Minato, and Danzo feared Fugaku's genjutsu to the point where he did not want Fugaku anywhere near the battlefield where the Nine Tails was. I believe between Tsunade coming to him with the information on Obito, Minato, who was Obito's sensei, likely being in the room, and Mikoto's friendship with Kushina being considered, I believe that Fugaku would agree to interrogate Obito. Based on the before mentioned light novel, Fugaku's genjutsu was enough that he could control the Nine Tails in the anime adaptation of both Itachi novels, Itachi's Story Daylight and Itachi's Story Midnight. There's a line where healthy Itachi acknowledges Fugaku as being someone that he wasn't sure he could beat in a death match. I do believe that Fugaku will be able to break Obito in a genjutsu battle, especially if there are chakra seals that are on Obito that prevent Obito from fully fighting back. Just as Sasuke used his Sharingan to read memories after the Ninja War during the events of the Sasuke Sunrise novel, I believe that Fugaku would do the same thing, or I believe that Fugaku would use genjutsu to force Obito to tell him the truth. A stunned silence would fill the room as Tsunade, Minato, Fugaku, and Hiruzen hear the truth that Obito tells them the story of how Madara Uchiha saved him, Nagato having Madara's Rinnegan, the death of Madara Uchiha, the plan to revive Madara using Nagato, and the plan to collect the 9 Biju. Hearing all of this would shock the room them with the information. It would be too insane to consider it as a possibility. One of them would say that this is too tall of a tale in order to be considered factual. However, Tsunade would point out that days prior to this, anyone saying that they would use genjutsu on Obito would be too tall of a tale to consider because Obito was believed to be dead. Having all this intel changes everything at this point. We know that by this point in the actual timeline, Obito had already twisted Nagato's mind into working for him. However, I don't believe Nagato will be too far gone in order to not be reasoned with, especially when he's told the truth that he was deceived, and this would make him remember that Yahiko suspected that the masked man wasn't actually Mamoru Uchiha. Given that there would be a connection to the Rain Village in Nagato, I believe that Tsunade would reach out to Jiraiya. A three-man team of Jiraiya, Minato, and Fugaku would make their way to the Rain Village. Even if they have to sneak in like Jiraiya did, once they arrive, a major change to the timeline would occur. Any battle that takes place with the Six Paths of Pain would likely play out differently than it did when Jiraiya confronted them. Being in the Rain Village means that Nagato can't use the Deva Path in order to use Chibaku Tensei. Given Jiraiya was able to kill several of the Pains on his own, this three-man team should be able to take down the Paths once Jiraiya figures out the secret of the dead bodies. The two geniuses, Minato and Fugaku, would deduce very quickly that the bodies were being controlled via the chakra receivers and that Nagato would have had to do so from a high vantage point. If Konan ran interference like she did originally, Fugaku could just place on a genjutsu and do exactly as Itachi did when he used genjutsu to speak to Naruto. If scenario 1 plays out, the battle's over with very quickly. If scenario 2 happens, there's no battle at all. Regardless of the scenario, there are two options for Minato: teleport them to the village, which would be a very high risk, or teleport to Obito's cell and teleport back to the Rain Village with Obito in tow. Going with scenario 2, things get very interesting. Nagato could confirm everything that was stated by using the King of Hell on Obito, which will prompt Nagato to kill Obito soon afterwards. This causes another major change in the timeline. Nagato knowing the truth about Obito means that the Akatsuki as we know it are never actually formed, which means that the members who go rogue are likely hunted down and killed over the course of several years to take place. Zetsu likely stays hidden away in some corner of the earth, hoping to never be caught so he doesn't get turned into fertilizer. Tsunade would arrange for a meeting with Nagato to offer to build a relationship with the Rain Village, and Jiraiya is likely there in order to help steer them into this direction. The next major change that would occur will be with Orochimaru. While it was originally stated that when Minato became the Fourth Hokage, he left the village, the Naruto manga later made a retcon to this and revealed that he actually left sometime after Minato's death. Keeping in mind the retcon, this changes everything. His desire to know more about the secrets of ninjutsu would lead to him continuing to cut up the bodies of young children. However, when a team is assembled to bring him in, Orochimaru is utterly screwed. Tsunade would not hesitate to kill Orochimaru like Hiruzen did. In fact, I believe because she knew that she was dealing with Orochimaru, Tsunade would take drastic measures. Instead of assembling Anbu, she would continue to show good favor to the Uchiha clan by having Fugaku on a three-man team in order to bring in Orochimaru, stating that his Sharingan would allow them to do so without attracting attention. The other person on this team would likely be Minato. Between the three of them being there, Orochimaru will be captured, and once again, using Sharingan Genjutsu, Fugaku could interrogate Orochimaru and learn of Danzo's connection to Orochimaru. At this point, Tsunade would extend the house cleaning to Danzo as well. Given how resourceful that Danzo is, I believe that Danzo would know of Orochimaru's capture. However, if Tsunade acts immediately on this information, Danzo would never learn that Orochimaru was captured. The reason being is that she could have Minato teleport to Hiruzen and then teleport to the closest marker to Danzo's home and have the two of them bring in Danzo, and under no circumstances is Danzo beating Minato and Prime Hiruzen in a battle. Orochimaru and Danzo will be promptly locked away. Given we know from Naruto Gaiden that Danzo had his Hashirama Cell arm already created by Orochimaru at this point, it's safe to assume that if he has any Sharingan in his arm, then the battle would take longer if it came to it, but ultimately he would still be locked away. From here, we don't have a lot of major changes in the timeline. Naruto would likely pass his graduation exam on the first attempt instead of on the third try, which means that Naruto would never be placed on Team 7 with Sasuke and Sakura since he would have graduated earlier. However, due to the cursed fate of reincarnates, Naruto and Sasuke would continue to have clashes. However, another thing that will work in favor towards peace would be Tsunade not giving the Anbu Black Ops part of the duties that belong to the Uchiha clan's police department. When Itachi begins making his way up the ranks, things wouldn't play out like they did in the first Itachi light novel, Daylight. A standout prodigy like Itachi would be on Tsunade's radar, and Itachi's sensei would not be able to hold him back on purpose. Itachi's teammate Tenma would never die due to Obito being dead in this timeline. For the first time ever, there would be a legitimate hope that an Uchiha could one day become Hokage because of how far above Itachi was over his peers. Itachi and Shisui would earn high praise in the village, likely making Jonin by the time that Sasuke makes Genin. Kakashi, once he overcomes the shock of Obito turning evil, will eventually become a Jonin squad leader, especially since Minato will be there to help him push through the healing process, and Mikoto and Kushina being friends opens up the possibility of Naruto and Sasuke actually breaking the cycle of hatred without needing to blow off their hands, because Sasuke wouldn't have the same triggers that pushed him to walk down the road of darkness unless Zetsu slinked into the village, which I don't believe he would have the balls to do. Whenever Tazuna seeks help from the Hidden Leaf village, given Naruto would never have requested the mission due to Naruto being a Genin for a much longer time and likely having real mission experience, once the Mist Village Chunin attacked the team that is sent with Tazuna, the Jonin squad leader would promptly return them to the village, and a Jonin like Itachi would be sent to the Land of Waves, which means that the Great Naruto Bridge would then be renamed the Great Bridge of Itachi. While there would be an open Cold War between the ninja villages due to there being no major threat to unite them, Konoha would be in really good hands. Tsunade would have several Hokage candidates to choose from, though Fugaku being 6 years younger than her means that Fugaku likely wouldn't be one of them if she chose to go for a younger replacement. Minato would definitely be one of them. Kakashi would also be a Hokage candidate, Itachi would be a Hokage candidate, and Shisui Uchiha would be another Hokage candidate. While I do believe that Minato would ultimately be chosen, I want to hear from you guys. Who do you guys think the 5th Hokage would be in this timeline? But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.